I wanted. Like, that's a perfectly good reason to withhold information from me, but it should have been in his documentary, or he should have given me a redacted version of it, or he should have at least been pushing these people to come forward and tell the truth.
Okay. Well, let's leave that as it is because, like I said, I'm not really interested in getting too deep into that without him here. But because I don't want to speak for him entirely.
You just
Um,
want him to know that you said something.
yes, actually,
In case
yes.
he sees this, you don't want to be seen buddying with me. You want to make sure that Slush knows that you told Mr. Girl that
That I conveyed a certain
he
yeah.
shouldn't have guilt trip him.
Yes, because we're friends, and because friends, aren't completely rational actors with each other, and that's okay. So,
Okay.
anyways, the conversation that I guess we're about to have
Slated to have, yeah.
is more so about this topics you've been discussing with people, and I haven't heard all of your conversations, so some of what you say might be retreading, but I'll try to keep that to a
Oh, that's
minimum.
fine.
And I think the way I think about things is pretty different from most of the people you've talked to. So hopefully we'll have a more interesting discussion. But so as I understand it, let's not waste too much time on like easy answers. Let me kind of state what would be your argument maybe, and then you can correct it, and then we could go from there. Is that fair?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pedophilic desires, attraction to minors or to children in the abstract, as in where there's no actions taken, there's no molestation, there's no, no one's being physically harmed. Um, I I think you would say that there's nothing wrong with those desires being indulged or fulfilled or fantasized about because no one is being harmed, and it's just a form of sexual expression. Is that correct?
When you say fulfilled,
I mean, like
do you
mentally
mean
fulfilled, like not, yeah,
like
like.
without not looking at CP?
Well,
Because
I don't know.
I would
Actually, I
argue
don't
that
know.
I would say looking at CP is an indirect harm to children. So
Okay, fine.
I
All
would
right,
say that
let's even
that's
leave that out of it. Just in the
okay.
abstract, just fantasizing about these
I can
desires.
fantasize about whatever I want.
You can.
Yeah,
Yes, you can.
yeah.
Okay.
I should fantasize about whatever I want.
Okay. And so but that is more or less your position, that there's nothing wrong with it. And then, moreover, I'm actually interested. Could you state your interest in this topic? Because it sounds like you're trying to open up a discussion about how we view pedophilia as a society and these desires, right?
I think I would actually say I wouldn't go as far. So I think it's possible to do some kind of self harm with just your thoughts. So like if you force yourself to think about or not to think about certain things, um, I don't think what I'm saying is that your thoughts can't harm you and by extension indirectly harm others. I think more what I'm saying is we need to let other people make those decisions about what they think about without moral or social or actual pressure. So I'm very against the idea of thought crimes.
Okay.
And that's and my interest in pedophilia is just that it's the one area I'm worried that we are heading toward well, I'm already uncomfortable with the amount of thought policing we already do. Really. I would like us to do less thought policing, but pedophilia is the area where people are most comfortable being in favor of thought policing.
That seems to be true. I'll
Yeah.
state that one thing I take issue with, and I think we could agree on this, is I'm also against thought crimes, and I'm also against, in principle, the idea, like, the commonly used phrase, like, oh, I think the answer to pedophiles is just a bullet, is just line them up against the wall. Like, I think that's inherently flawed too. I don't think that's a solution. I think that's you know, um, I take issue with that, and I don't agree with that at all. I think the answer to pedophilia, or whatever, the way that we should deal with it as a society, is through some sort of therapeutic, mind opening experiences that lead people to, well, towards a greater meaning and towards a greater truth. And I think the issue that I have with pedophilia, even in the abstract, in terms of the desires, the fantasy about it, is that it's a perversion. Ultimately, it's a perversion of the self, and it's a sinful thing to use religious terminology, not because just a book or a text has said that it's sinful, but because it removes people from, it detaches people from the connection to the source, to consciousness, and it externalizes these desires of wanting to connect with childhood innocence, creativity, imagination, all these wonderful things we associate with childhood, and it makes it a perverse sexual desire that is externalized onto someone else, onto another child, even if there's no action taken, even if there's no molestation, no one harmed. The fantasy of that in itself is a layer removed from what I would call an objective truth, an objective good, and that's what I believe in, that there is an objective truth. I don't know if you feel the same, but that's why
I don't think I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I think pedophilia is a spectrum that we're all on.
Okay.
So I think there's a certain black and white way that you're describing pedophiles as the other.
Mm.
And I don't think I view them that way. I think at a certain point, it becomes useful to slap a label on somebody, sure. But I think there's probably a lot of people who are attracted to children, but who can make do with an adult, just as there are people who are, you know, straight but could date somebody that their same gender if they, you know, felt pressed to or wanted. Like people in jail have sex with men. Men have sex with men when if they never went to jail, maybe they wouldn't, but you know, they can make do.
Let's start with. Let me start by introducing an example. I know it's a different thing, but it's a similar concept of like, okay, murder. It's wrong to murder someone. It's wrong to physically harm someone. Do you think it's wrong to? I guess you would agree though that it's wrong. It's also wrong to fantasize about murdering someone, even if it doesn't lead to
No.
anything. No, you wouldn't agree.
No, that's like it's like you're saying it's wrong to get angry or it's wrong to get horny. Like no. Well, usually if you're angry or horny, you're usually thinking about doing something illegal.
Hmm. Okay, but well, when I say wrong, I don't mean like you're not allowed to think that. I mean more so there's a, well, I would put it this way. Then this again ties to the objective thing. There's a lower nature and there's a higher nature. And being angry in the moment is one thing, but if you can't control that anger, well then it leads to consequences, bad decisions and that kind of thing. But even if you feel the emotion of wanting to kill someone emerge, there's an
Hmm.
objective good quality to having control over that emotion and to not indulging in the fantasy of wanting to murder someone versus someone who feels that urge and then indulges in it, even if not in a physical way, but just mentally indulging in that fantasy. I think the person,
Yeah,
do you see what I'm
I,
saying?
I I I think doing whatever you are thinking is bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Again,
then,
but again, that's like so. I believe in actual laws and crime. I think we should stop people from committing crimes.
yeah, I agree.
But but thinking has to be different from doing, which
Okay.
is one problem I have with religion in general is that the lines are certainly blurred where you can commit sins just by thinking.
Hmm. Well, then, okay, but you don't believe that there's an objective better way, there's an objective good way to be, to think, to feel, to that all these things are subjective, meaning one feeling or one desire is not better than another feeling or another desire, right?
Um, if you're evaluating them on how good would it be to actually do it, then you're just circling back to equating thoughts with actions. So I can't go along with evaluating my urges based on how good it would be if I carried them out. So then my what I'm left with is it bad for me or bad for other people around me just to have these urges or feelings or thoughts or whatever? And I'm yeah, I think I'm not on board with labeling thoughts as bad unless they're my thoughts and I don't like them.
So you
Like
believe
if
it's
I
all
if
subjective, in other words. It's up to the person to determine what is good and what is bad.
when it comes to thoughts, yeah, like wouldn't it be weird if I came on here and I was like, I really don't like how my girlfriend was feeling this morning. You know, it really bothered me what she was thinking and feeling this morning. Looking at her, I could tell I'm really not a fan. And you're like, oh, is she upset? And I'm like, no, 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 she's fine with what she's thinking and feeling, but I didn't like it.
Hmm.
There's a overreach, I guess, of the church there, and some places the government of telling somebody else that what they are feeling and thinking is bad, even if they don't think it is.
Hmm.
So it's not subjective. I guess it becomes subjective in that case, but it's more about autonomy. It's like you're saying you think your sexual orientation is subjective. Like I I just don't think it's our place to tell other people whether their thoughts or feelings are bad,
Okay.
especially feelings. Because a thought you can disagree with.
I
Like
would say
an idea can be bad or incorrect,
certain
but
feelings have
you can't disagree with how I feel.
no, of course not. You
Okay.
feeling that way is valid and is true, but it also doesn't mean that it also doesn't mean that there is a greater understanding that could be okay. Like, let me put it to you this way. Maybe this will
Okay.
convey what I'm trying to say. Um,
Okay.
like casual sex is a good example where, somebody could have these lust-based feelings. It's a real feeling. They feel lust and desire to have sex with someone of their same age, of their same whatever, in every socially acceptable way that there is. Um,
Okay.
and they have that sexual experience with someone they just met or they recently met that is entirely based on lust and it's consensual and it's all these things. Well, that experience, that feeling, is objectively less meaningful than a feeling that is tied with someone that you're in love with, that you share time with, that you share values with, that you love as a person beyond the feeling of lust. In other words, there are lower levels, there are lower vibrations of feeling, and there are higher vibrations of feeling. And some of them are more animalistic and instinctive, like lust, like short term pleasure and gratification. And there are feelings that produce what I would say is more goodness over the span of time because they're more for long term. They're longer term feelings that aren't fleeting. Things like meaning and contentment and love and what these kinds of things. These are higher feelings. Do you see where I'm coming from with that?
I understand what you are saying, but I don't agree with anything you're saying. But yes, I'm following.
Okay. Well, then that's kind of maybe where we disagree then is because if you don't if you feel like if you think all feelings are subjective in the sense that my lust isn't any less valuable or meaningful than my love for someone, my lust for someone I just met the other day is not any less meaningful than my love for someone I've known all my life, then then what that really means is just a very vapid nihilistic worldview in which nothing matters at all. And
Well,
it's also
I think you're abstracting something that doesn't need to be abstracted. We can obviously agree that lust, um, especially for someone you just met, once satisfied, is not likely to last for too long, and love, definitionally, is a longer lasting attachment and um, like a broader spectrum of emotion toward another person.
Mhm.
I don't know that we need to then abstract it into, and therefore it is higher or more meaningful or less animalistic or better. I feel like those are confusing labels to put on something that already is. We already know the difference between lust and love when we're talking about it. So I
how do
just
you
feel
know
like
the
you're,
difference?
well, colloquially, I think you and I both know that if you are feeling lust and then you masturbate, you will not be feeling lust anymore. If you're feeling love and you masturbate, you will still feel love. If you feel love and you get in a fight, you still feel love.
Mhm.
If you feel love and the person farts, you still feel love. Like lust is obviously a more transient, fragile thing that we can go in and out of quickly and uh, easily, even with people we haven't met.
So the experience informs the values in that case. The experience of
Again, I feel like you're abstracting.
how is that an abstraction? It's a direct experience. If I feel lust and I masturbate, then I have
Yeah,
experienced the feeling of lust coming
yeah,
and going. And if I feel love, I have
yes.
directly experienced the feeling of loving someone. And so through that, it's like through the direct experience, it's not, I think it's actually you who's abstracting, because what you're saying is, well, these things on paper are love and lust, these other feelings,
Hmm.
they exist in this abstract, defined word of what they are. And I'm saying, no, the defined word comes from the experience first and foremost.
Sure, but then you are starting to string together other concepts and ideas that I don't agree with.
Okay, let's
That
go there.
are like saying that one is more animalistic.
Hmm.
The implication that humans aren't animals, I don't
Right.
agree with.
We're, oh,
Um,
okay, go on.
yeah, and or the value you're saying you're injecting values into your um like statements here. Clearly, you're saying love is better than lust.
Well, me injecting the values again is downstream from me experiencing these feelings, and so values are downstream from they're derived from the experience. And so let me mention. You're right. This does go into very philosophical, spiritual territory, but that's what I'm interested in. And if you are too, then we can go there. But I'll just say on the note of humans and animals is, um, we're clearly biological creatures and all that, but we're the only animal on this planet that is self-aware, that experiences consciousness in the way that we are right now, and the way that we're self-aware of our own existence. This is the plight of man. This is the unique quality of man. This is why we're special in any way that we are, is because we're a
But isn't
conscious.
that partly? Didn't we murder everybody else who was capable of doing that? Also, I don't. Are chimpanzees not capable of consciousness? I don't know if that's true. We
Not
murdered all of the. We murdered everyone who could figure out how to get out of a cage. But I don't
um
know that means. I don't know if that's a good special thing about us.
I don't
Or is that,
I,
am I incorrect? I assume that like Neanderthals and Australopithecus and all these other species um, are dead partly because of genocide.
I would say it was more. I think the jury's still out on that. Actually, I don't
Okay, but
think
so
we.
if they were, okay, so let's say they hadn't gone extinct.
Mhm.
Okay, well, do we agree that we would kill them if we could? If they came back, we would kill them all.
We might subjugate them and
Yeah, we would
do something
enslave them. Sure.
something like that. But I also don't believe that. It's not even that I believe. I think this is just scientifically a fact as well. And this is where it gets muddied, because you get into the realm of psychology, which is a whole nother thing. But chimpanzees and Neanderthals, they're not operating on the same level of consciousness as us. I don't think that they were capable of the same level of
No, but
structure
I,
and beliefs. And go on.
I'm just saying that the gap between us and the next smartest animal may not be something we should be super proud of. I guess yeah, the jury's still out. We don't know. We don't know why they went extinct totally, but we know that if they were still around, they could still be around. I mean, even early humans were not as smart as we are, and so I just like yes, there is a gap of intelligence between us and chimps, but there could be other species in that gap. So I just don't agree that that gives us some like innate special quality.
There could be, but the evolutionary records are pretty sparse. I mean, that's the whole the missing link thing. I mean, not only are we different from chimpanzees, we're many, many layers removed. And it's, as far as I'm aware, and scientifically speaking, a great mystery as to how humans emerged on this planet and how consciousness emerged. And this is why psychology is the weakest branch of science, is because we don't really have an explanation for consciousness, this conscious experience we have. There's no logical reason we're experiencing it in the way that we are. And
I guess I just don't agree with that at all.
well, you can agree with it or not, but that's just the truth.
I don't agree with it. Well, it's not the truth. I don't agree with that either.
That we're a unique biological entity in this
Yes,
world
I
of
don't
creation.
think that's true. I can imagine an animal that is so much smarter than us that it's having this conversation about us.
I can imagine something having the conversation, but I've yet to see any animals or any proof of any animals who are having this conversation. And so,
Do you need to see proof of something in order to be able to imagine it?
no, but I don't. I'm not limiting that to the animal kingdom, and I think limiting it to the animal kingdom is clearly to me it's more obvious that we're interacting with some higher form of being that's not necessarily a biological life.
I think that's an arrogant fallacy to say that there couldn't be an animal that is smarter than us. It must be an alien or a god. I'm saying I can picture an animal that is so much smarter than us that
Then the animal just becomes your god, doesn't it?
I don't think we're the god of chimpanzees. We just know how to hide the keys from them.
Well, it's like, okay, you're saying I can imagine that there's an animal smarter than us, and I'm saying,
Yeah.
Such an animal does not exist as far as science is aware of. Such an animal
Agreed.
does not exist.
We're on top, but
Okay.
but I'm saying we're not on top because we're special. We're just on top because we're on top.
Okay, yeah, I understand that viewpoint. That's obviously the default
100,000
viewpoint.
years ago, the smartest Homo sapiens were not that smart, and they were thinking the same shit we're thinking. Compared to us, though, they're like retarded.
See, I don't even believe that. 100,000 years ago, I believe there were civilizations that there's records of now on Earth, and you could see it in archaeological sites, and where tens of thousands of years ago. You know, the
Yeah,
Sumerian.
100,000 years ago, there were humans, but they were not that smart.
I think it's arrogant to assume that.
Well, there's no evidence that they were smart.
Well, there's evidence that we can't account for, such as how did Sumeria rise 10,000 years ago? This complex civilization with ethics, with structure.
10,000 years ago, 10,000
Out
years
of
ago.
hunter-gatherers. We don't have an explanation for that in the archaeological record or in any
Yeah,
scientific
I agree
theory.
that humans were smart 10,000 years ago, but I'm saying 100,000 years ago,
Well, no,
they
I'm
would
saying
be they would be the smartest creatures to walk the earth, and yet if they met us, we would laugh at their cognitive abilities
okay, that's making
and easily.
a few different assumptions, though.
Okay, I guess my whole point is that it's uh, it's like white people going to Africa and saying like, oh, we must be the best because we're white. That makes sense. But the white people then couldn't imagine like super white people who thinks that they're savages.
Mm.
And like so like if you and I went back to Europe in the 1500s or 1600s to see all these smug white people, we'd be like, do you floss? Do you have a smartphone? Like to us, they're savages, but to them, it's unimaginable. So I'm saying that there is a hypothetical creature that is so much smarter than you that it thinks that you're a chimp.
Right, and that's God. That's a higher being that we can't comprehend.
No,
What?
I'm saying that's hubris, that you can't comprehend an animal that is like 50% smarter than you. That you think any animal that's smarter than you must be God? No. We're smart compared to like retarded animals like dogs and stuff. Like, yeah, we're really smart. But it is also possible like
Let me ask you this,
like you have to use a calculator, right? To multiply two 6-digit numbers together. Almost everybody does. But there could be an animal that laughs at the idea that like, oh, you need a team of software engineers to to make Facebook? Are oh, how embarrassing, you
Right.
know?
Well, see, this gets into this is we don't
And
even
I
have
don't think that would, but that wouldn't be God. That would just be a primate that is much smarter than you.
we don't even have to talk in the abstract here because this is a very real problem that I think humanity is facing right now, where you have AI and computers and artificial intelligence. So
Yes, but once again, you're still veering off into if anything is smarter than us, it must be not an animal.
no, I'm saying we already have things that are in many ways smarter than humans that we've created,
But I'm
right?
talking about an animal that's smarter than humans. And
Okay.
I feel that you are rejecting the possibility that this could exist.
It's maybe possible, but
It's certainly possible.
there's no evidence for it. And what you're saying is a
I'm
very
not.
evidence-based viewpoint, I think.
No, I'm just saying it's possible that there is an animal that one day will be so much smarter than us that it views us like chimps, the way we view chimps. And I don't think you like this idea, even though it is obviously there's no way to disagree with this. You have to accept this.
Um, let me just tell you what's going through my head right now.
Okay.
So, using this viewpoint, we're this animal, okay, and we're at this point
Yeah.
now where we could destroy our own civilization and our own Earth if we act in certain ways, right? Do you acknowledge that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, and we're also at this point now with AI and artificial intelligence where maybe it's not a biological form of life, but we can also create something that it already is, replacing humans in a lot of day-to-day tasks and intellectual labor. You also
Okay.
agree with that?
Sure.
Okay. So to me, it's like, well, we don't have any evidence. There's no other animals that we're aware of that we've seen that are capable of our similar level of intelligence. And the next step forward, everything technologically, evolutionarily, if you want to use that term, is pointing towards an artificial form of life, or what we would call artificial, an AI being that next smarter animal that's more capable than us. But the animal is just a
Sure.
term. It's like,
Well, I'm talking about a hypothetical. Are you saying that you don't want to engage with this hypothetical, or should we just move on?
I guess it is possible, but it's also not real. It's possible in a hypothetical,
Uh, uh,
sure, but
yeah,
as
all
it exists
hypotheticals
now,
are.
as it
Yeah,
exists now, we are the conscious experiment that is uniquely
absolutely.
self-aware. That
I'm
is a
talking about
truth.
a hypothetical. Well, I don't know if I would say more self-aware. I mean, there are different tests for self-awareness, and some animals pass some of them.
Mhm.
But I'm talking about a hypothetical that it feels like by saying that's not happening, you're saying you don't want to engage with the hypothetical. I know it's not happening. That's why it's a hypothetical.
Mm. Okay, let's say it is happening. So there's an animal that's 20%
Well,
smarter
it's
than us.
yeah,
Okay.
200% smarter.
Uh-huh. And this is determined.
That is,
Okay, go on.
well, however you want to determine it.
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
test you give them, they beat us
Mm-hmm.
by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you beat like a crab at checkers,
Mm.
the crab can't even understand that it is being tested.
Well, I would say in that hypothetical, if they have the same or greater, and this is the great mystery. Okay, this is where I would say
I'm
none.
saying so much smarter than us that we can't even tell that it is that we don't even know that it's set a checkerboard up in front of us. We don't know what's happening. We know of them. We know they're smarter than us, but
I would say it's
we
possible, but it's also
yeah.
possible that such a thing exists outside of this physical material paradigm that
But
we're
in the
so used to.
hypothetical, it's just an animal. It's an earthbound animal.
Okay, fine. And
You-
that's a potential hypothetical. And in another
Yeah,
hypothetical, it's a higher being that we can't even conceive of.
Right. And so I guess what I'm pointing to as hubris on your part is that your brain seems to jump as soon as the mention of a primate that is vastly smarter than us, you jump to interdimensional beings and traveling along energy waves
Well,
because you don't like the idea that there's a primate that there could be or will be a primate that can just think and consciousize and experience circles around us. We've got five senses, they've got 15. They got organs, we can't even tell what they fucking do. And we can never know what they
I would
do.
say that's not hubris. Mine is based on something you can observe and my viewpoint of that is based on something you can observe and experience directly. Your hypothetical is based on something there's no evidence for. There's no evidence of such an animal. However, there is
a
evidence.
hypothetical is a hypothetical is not a hypothesis. I'm not saying that that is happening. I'm saying it's not happening, but you can imagine it happening. And if you can imagine it happening, I think that my ability to imagine that happening makes me see myself. I don't see myself as the pinnacle of consciousness. I just see myself on a spectrum of from a one-celled organism all the way up to me. But the pinnacle of conscious, how conscious it is possible to be, could be many orders of magnitude above where the average human is.
I agree with that.
And so there
However,
could be an animal that is 3 times as conscious, 3 times as self-aware, and 3 times as intelligent as we are. There could be an animal that doesn't understand the concept of forgetting your keys. Or there could be an animal that doesn't understand the concept of
yeah,
like,
I get the idea. What I'm
yeah,
saying though is, if you,
okay,
I would like to complete this thought, is
okay,
this hypothetical animal is just that. It's an abstract idea that there is no evidence for, and there's not something you and I can interact with. Now, the idea though of a higher consciousness is something there is evidence for, and is something we can interact with. That's the difference. It's not hubris. It's one of them is just a pie in the sky idea that could or could not happen with this animal. The other is something I
mm-hmm.
can interface with directly, this higher consciousness, this higher design. And where is that found? It's found in nature. It's found in the mathematical equations that describe nature. It's found in art. It's found in the immaterial, metaphysical, that people have the ability uniquely. This is why I think people are special, is because people can create art in a way that animals and other life forms simply don't have the capability to, because they don't have the same level of conscious experience. And so what I'm saying is this hypothetical higher consciousness is not so hypothetical. It's seen in the evidence, again, of art, of nature, of these designs, these proof of a higher design. Whereas this hypothetical animal does not exist and never has existed as far as science and as far as I'm concerned.
okay.
So I don't think it's hubris at all. I think it's hubris to assume that the animal kingdom is the end-all be-all of consciousness.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that it is. I'm just trying to say that I don't see us as being in a separate category from animals in terms of consciousness or in terms of intelligence.
Okay.
And I don't think consciousness is magical.
Well, what? So then, are you determinist then? That do you believe that everything is predetermined? Do you believe that you are an advocate of agency, of autonomy, free will?
Yeah,
I'm guessing is something you must believe then, right?
I think that I believe in free will when um, my girlfriend leaves like balled up paper towels on the kitchen counter.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lens that you can look through, as is determinism. It does usually people want to look through the lens of determinism when they've done something that other people don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, "Oh, I had to do that." And when
Right.
someone does something you don't like, then we want to view things through a lens of free will and say, "You had every opportunity and you pissed it all away because you're a piece of shit."
Mm-hmm.
I guess calling someone a piece of shit goes back to determinism. But I would say that neither lens is really sufficient on its own for
Well, I think this relates
understanding.
to the pedophilia topic, because if
Hmm.
we are to assume that people have free will, then it's also assuming that people can change. And if people can change, then that is a great reason to, you know, I guess label certain ways of thinking as perverse and to be improved, or that there's a better way to think. Because if people have the capability to change, then it's okay if they're wrong, because they can be redeemed, they can be improved. But if it's all
Yeah, I don't think
determined,
you can choose. I don't think you can choose how you feel.
but you can choose what you experience.
I don't think so. I think you can delude yourself, but I don't think you can choose what. I don't think you can control what makes you horny.
You can control your experience.
I disagree with you.
So then
Do you think you can make yourself straight if you're gay?
hypothetically, sure, but
In reality,
no, I mean,
like, do you think people choose to be gay?
I think most people don't, but some people have, through a series of choices or experiences, decided that that's preferential to them. And the same thing with pedophilia, where it's like, you know, I mean, I don't even know if this is the case, but let's just grant you, or grant whoever, that some people are just born with some sort of, let's say, like genetic predisposition to be a pedophile.
Yeah.
You know, that still doesn't mean, though, that they can't control the outcome of their lives, or even they can't control their desires, or even that they can't
Boy,
control their
you're
experience.
that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, can you choose if you're straight or gay? Generally, do you think that's something that people have control over?
You know, this is going to sound weird, but if I'm being consistent and if I'm being honest with what I've thought, with how I feel, I would say yes. I would say yeah. I would lean more towards yes. I don't know if it's a black and white like that, but
Okay, so how do you explain
there
all the
is
gay
some.
people in places and cultures and communities where it is absolutely horrible to be gay? They have not
Well,
mastered themselves.
I think that they're. It's not about mastering themselves or not. It's more about the environment that they're in has pushed them towards a certain direction. And not that, you might say, well, it would be easier if they were
Well,
straight.
there's a lot of people who are gay but who want to be straight. I would say
Yeah.
probably most people on Earth who are gay wish they were straight.
Mhm. This is
So
hard
why
because
aren't so
this is something I would want to interview a gay guy about, because it's hard for me um, to fully understand. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, let me put it to you this way. Let me dial it back a bit. Somebody who is straight can engage in desires or behaviors that I think are gay, or that just are gay, that are
yeah,
homosexual. And I think
yeah.
with enough time and with enough indulgence, or whatever you want to call it, into those desires, they can act and have a sexual orientation in a way that's indistinguishable from someone who's gay, even though they were straight at
Okay.
some point. So what would you call
So
that?
you're saying that it's possible that many straight people have a little fire,
Yes.
little gay fire
I see. This is
that needs
actually,
to be
it's a spectrum. It is a spectrum.
absolutely. But you're also, it's not just a spectrum. You're describing it as more of an infection. Some are more infected, some are less infected, but unchecked, gay or pedophilic or any undesirable urges could spread. I guess I just think you have a very repressive view of this. You're saying if you give air to it, then could burn you up.
Well, I didn't use language like that. I'm not even putting a value judgment. I'm just saying, as a matter of,
Well, it would be bad if everyone were gay.
it would be bad for life, because, well, we
It
wouldn't
would be
have
objectively
reproduced.
bad. Yeah, it would be bad for life if everyone were heterosexual lust is what keeps us going as a species. So
Right.
unless we want to go extinct, or we want to, I guess we could just have like all in vitro babies. But if we didn't have the technology to do that, then it being gay, if everyone were gay, that would be pretty
Well,
bad.
okay, actually, that's an interesting point because I would say to that, within though, this is why I would not equate homosexuality with pedophilia because the species life can go on, families can go on, and homosexuality can also be a thing. Without everyone being a homosexual. And it's like there
Hmm.
is a value, there is a purpose, I would even say, to homosexuality. There's a place for it.
Sure.
That's what I would say. There's a place for whether you want to say it's because the more feminine men are able to, interface with, they're able to have different perspectives that are valuable, that contribute to art, to culture, or whether it's because, one evolutionary perspective is like, the more homosexuals there are, the less it's almost a population check where it's like it won't overpopulate if a certain percentage is
Hmm.
is homosexual, right?
Sure.
So like there, in other words, what I'm saying is there is a place and a value. I would argue for homosexuality within a culture, within a society, and maybe there's even, and I would even maybe say there's a threshold for that if I'm being completely consistent with what I'm saying. But with pedophilia, I don't see any. There is no purpose. It's completely detached from it's a perversion entirely. It's the ultimate perversion. Because, well, I'll explain if you want. I could explain that.
If you want to,
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on you thinking that you can control if you're gay or not. But I guess we can just agree to disagree there.
Well, where do you think the line with autonomy is? Because you seem to
I
be.
think.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, I think you. I think. Um, the line with autonomy. Yeah, I think to some extent you can control what you think about, but I guess I feel that there's a kind of bedrock um, proclivity or proclivities that we all have that we can engage with or try to snuff out. But I don't think you can really snuff it out. And I think that you're going to be thinking about gay stuff whether you want to know that you are or not, to some extent. And I guess I just don't agree that engaging with it or being aware of it makes it stronger.
Mm.
And then, so with pedophilia, um, I think we're all going to have thoughts and feelings, sexual thoughts and feelings about people of all ages to some extent, and like a bell curve, and where, I guess, how aware you are of those feelings and how much air you give them within yourself. Um, I don't think we can call that good or bad. I think that
Do you think that
obviously,
self awareness, greater understanding of the self, and greater self awareness is a good thing or a bad thing, or that doesn't matter at all?
I think I wouldn't want someone babysitting my kids unless they had to honestly look themselves in the mirror and come to terms with how attracted they are to, or could be to, like a 12-year-old
Mm-hmm.
based, in different situations. If somebody has never thought about that, um, and they have no idea, that's scary to me. A lack of awareness of self, I think, makes someone into more of a powder keg.
Okay, I think we agree there. Actually, yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly right. Um, I'm all for increasing self awareness and contending with. You have to confront these thoughts, whether they're perverse, evil, or bad, or whatever, however bad they are, because if you don't confront them, they will be there sitting in the darkness like a powder keg, potentially, like you said. I think that's true. I think everyone, do you agree with this? That everyone is capable of the most evil thing possible and the most good thing possible. In other words, the spectrum of good and evil runs through the line of every human art. That's Alexander
I guess I
Schultz.
don't think in terms of good. I don't think in terms of good and evil.
But do you think people have the same capacity for good and evil?
No, I think some people have a more genetic disposition to.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know what you mean by evil.
Okay.
Crime.
Um,
I
well,
don't. I don't think we have this. I don't. I don't really use those words.
yeah. Well, see, because it sounds like your worldview is very subjective, where it's like good and evil are just depending on what society deems as good and evil, right?
Yeah, or depending on what I deem as good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
guess. I guess I view it as an abstraction. There's things people like and things people don't like, and if you really don't like something, then we say it's evil.
but what's not abstract is direct conscious experience. If anything is not abstract, it's that. If anything can be determined to be real, it's that. That's all we have that we know is real. If that's not real, nothing is.
I guess. I mean, there's times where you're dreaming and then you. Is that does that count? If you're dreaming but you think you're awake, is that still a direct conscious experience?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Um, and so, if that's
Uh,
the case, well, then I
yeah.
think there are certain, again, this is where I know you disagree with this framing, but like the higher, lower feelings, it's like,
Yeah.
if that's the case, that the most real thing is this conscious experience, and if uh, certain feelings are certain feelings are going to be more or less fulfilling in the long term and more or less good or bad in the long term, determined by more or less not only suffering, but um, not only suffering individually, but suffering for people around you and people in general. And um, have you ever done psychedelics?
No.
Do you have any interest in doing them?
No.
What about meditation or like sensory deprivation, these kinds of things?
Um. Not specifically.
Are you interested in searching for the truth? What is your MO? What is your, or is it just a big game that you want to win at?
Life.
Sure. Life, this conversations you're having and with people. I mean, what is your goal? Is your goal to find the truth, or is your goal to just make money?
And the conversations.
Yeah, all of your efforts online, all of this. Yes.
I would say my mission statement is to increase people's empathy for others and themselves,
Okay. To increase people's
and
empathy.
and then also to explain my values of free speech and free thought.
Okay.
But humanization, I would say, is kind of like my broad mission. And then yeah, making money. Yeah.
Humanization. What does that mean to you?
To help people see each other as humans, which is another reason why I want to like another reason why I'm talking to pedophiles and stuff. So I want
But if humans are
people
just
to
animals, then what does it matter? If I see you as a human, fine, but you're just another animal, and so am I. And we don't, I don't, whatever. In other words, what value does it have to see each other as humans if humans are just only
well,
animals?
we're still in a team. Like if somebody's if we're on like a boat and somebody's like, "Oh my God, you can either save Glink or you can save this squirrel. Like, what are you gonna do?" Like, I'm obviously gonna choose you.
Mm-hmm.
I innately care about other human. If somebody says, if I see a bird that got ran over by the side of the road, I'm like, oh, birdie. If I see a baby that got ran over by the side of the road, I'm gonna be talking about it in fucking therapy for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, I'm not saying that humans aren't animals when I say humanization. I'm just saying, as opposed to
You value human
dehumanization.
life more than other forms of life. And do you know
Yes,
why you do? Just because you feel like it's an innate?
I believe that is probably a genetic
Okay.
trait.
Okay.
I can see why that would be selected for.
So we're just byproducts of evolution and nothing else really matters.
We are just byproducts of evolution and nothing else really matters. I don't know. I don't think I agree with the second part. we are just byproducts of evolution. Well, you say just like it's a small thing, but I think in byproducts, I don't think I agree with anything you just said. No, I would say we, like all animals, are participating in evolution,
Hmm.
and we are all the product of evolution.
Okay. Well, see, this is, I think I'm just taking it a step further, and maybe this is why I'm an advocate of psychedelics and different altered states of consciousness, because if you experience these altered states of consciousness, you directly interface with something beyond just that. And I don't think you're taking it far enough. When you're saying, I want to humanize people, I want there to be more empathy, well, you could see maybe where that would fall short, where, okay, to you, there's a certain value to upholding this evolutionary experiment, to keeping it going because it's an innate thing. But to somebody else, they could just as easily say, yeah, that's kind of the genetic predisposition I have, but that's not valuable. That doesn't matter. We should just end all life. And it doesn't matter if we do or we don't, because who cares? This is just a random evolutionary chance that we're here anyways, right? You could see that being justified.
Not really. I don't. I've never met somebody who experienced their emotions about their lives and the people around them through that existential lens. To me, that usually is somebody who is having trouble connecting to other people for other reasons, and then reaches for the existential lens because it is the most similar to how they're already feeling and what they're already seeing. But I like, again, like
Wait, I
when
want to
I'm
stop you
talking
right
to,
there.
sure,
What you just said is exactly the key point. Their
okay,
existential beliefs are
yeah.
derived from how they feel and how connected they feel to other people.
I'm more saying that the application of the existential beliefs to your day to day life, that doesn't really make sense to me. So I don't believe there's a God, and I don't believe there's any magical energy or connecting me to other people or whatever the hell you believe. I don't. Whatever you believe, I'm pretty sure I don't believe it. However, um, I'm not saying therefore I'm walking around all day thinking nothing means anything and this is all meaningless because we're all molecules. I'm not. That's not how I, or anyone for the most part, I think, experiences their emotions.
Right. Because you're experiencing emotions to begin with, of course you're
Hmm.
going to think it matters and it means something and there is some reason to
Well, it means
continue
something to
living.
me. But that doesn't mean there's some like
Don't you
magical thing
think,
going on.
don't you, this is the part maybe that I feel like I've experienced and maybe you haven't. Your experiences
Um.
are not unique to you entirely. There's a universal shared experience as well going on here.
Okay.
Or do you think that it's all individualistic and it's all subjective? You see the difference? It's like you're saying, well, to me that matters because these are the things I experience. And it's like, okay, yes, but also the things you experience, I also experience on some level. I know what that feels like. That's how you connect with people because you share in that conscious experience.
Uh. Okay. I don't. I guess I just don't. I don't. I just don't see things that way.
You don't see them,
Listen.
huh?
I don't. Oh, I see. Okay. I think you're wrong. If you want me to put it more plainly. I have to call my pedophile real quick. Can I call you? Can I call you back in like 1 minute?
Yeah, go for it.
Or is that okay with
Yeah,
you? I
I'm
was
here.
supposed to do a sound test because he's worried his equipment doesn't work.
Okay, yeah, all good. I'll be here.
Uh, okay. All right. I'll call you right back.
Cool. I wonder if I should break the rule and look at chat. You see, this we've reached the impasse because Mr. Girl doesn't see things that way because he's never seen things that way. He's never experienced things that way. But if he had that experience, he might be able to see things that way. This is where we've reached the barriers of language, limitations of language, and abstract ideas. because, you know, this is something, in order to really understand the shared conscious experience, you have to be intimate with it. And, well, there's a certain level at which we experience it in our sober, day-to-day, conditioned, language-oriented views.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I was just explaining something, and maybe I'll repeat it to you because I think it's very relevant. It seems we've reached a bit of an impasse.
Impasse.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think I know why. Because
Okay.
you don't have the experience of the feeling of this shared conscious connection. This is where language has its limitations, as I hope you'll recognize that language, especially English, has a lot of limitations when it comes to describing existential, deeply emotional feelings. But one who's experienced this feeling of shared oneness with conscious, the source of consciousness, as I would call it, can see things from my point of view. But one who hasn't will have difficulty seeing things from that point of view. And this is why direct experience is important. So I would say that if you are interested in having your beliefs challenged, or even in furthering your goal of human empathy, the way to get there is it's worth trying a direct experience that will be that will make you feel something on a deeper connection to life, to people, to creation than perhaps you felt before. And I would say psychedelics, shrooms in the right setting will take you there.
Well, okay.
Even music,
You're saying
art can take you there.
You're
too.
saying
Love.
you're saying that you're saying I don't agree with you because, not because I have any valid reason for thinking you're wrong, but because I have not connected myself to the source of consciousness adequately, or maybe at all. And if I were to do shrooms or listen to the right music, then I would come around to your way of thinking. Now, while that is a pretty annoying assertion to make, it is also inarguable. Because if I haven't connected to the source of all consciousness, I haven't connected to the source of all consciousness, and there is nothing I can say in response to that. So I have to agree that we are in fact at an impasse there. If
Okay,
you're right, I would never know it.
let me say one more thing though. Hold on.
Sure.
If you're
Go on.
right, this is a fun experiment though, because if you're right and your worldview is right, and you're sure of it, then having this experience, whatever it may be, whether it's a meditation or maybe even being deeply in love with someone, or a psychedelic trip, if you have this experience and you come
I
away
am
with it,
deeply in love with someone.
okay, fine, but whatever I'm imagining it to be, or whatever I've experienced that I feel that you haven't, let's say, that I'm calling a deeper level, if you go away from that experience and you have the same conclusion you have now, then you've proven something to yourself and to others. In other words, you have nothing to be afraid of, because what's the worst?
I'm not afraid of the experience. I'm afraid of damaging my brain.
Oh, okay.
I'm not afraid of the experience of tripping on shrooms. I just don't want to put chemicals in my brain to make it stop working temporarily.
Right. You're okay with putting a lot of other chemicals in your brain, though, I'm assuming.
Like what?
Well, I mean, you know, everything we eat, everything we consume is,
Well, I have to eat food.
Yeah.
Yes, I am comfortable eating shiitake mushrooms. Not all mushrooms, just psychedelics and the poisonous ones that I don't like.
You know, it would be one thing if we were just shooting in the dark, eating random poisonous mushrooms, but luckily there's a plethora of scientific data, clinical evidence, and, you know, history with this kind of thing that you wouldn't have to worry about the mind-altering effects being damaging to you any more than you would about falling into a relationship with someone.
I don't feel, I'm very wary of doing drugs. Yeah. I don't think it's because of the experiential part of it, but
What are you worried about with drugs?
my brain. I don't want to damage my brain any more than I have to.
Are
Okay,
you
so what's
okay?
your stance here? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Are you okay with? You're okay with sitting at your computer, looking at a screen, looking at blue light all day? That might damage your brain. Is that a drug? Would you call that a drug?
Well, it damages your eyes more than your brain, but is that a drug? No. Light is not a drug.
I mean, what you call a drug is just another label.
If they're going to come out with a new screen that doesn't damage our eyes at all, I would prefer that. For sure.
Are you okay with taking pharmaceutical substances, manufactured substances like that?
Not recreationally.
But you're
Not
okay
not
with
not I'm not going to take pharmaceutical substances so that I can understand your view that being a pedophile is wrong because you've connected to the source of consciousness better than me. No.
mm,
I
it's
don't
not
that doesn't sound
exactly
like
my
something I'm going to do.
viewpoint. I wouldn't make it about me knowing better than you. I would
Well,
make
but you
it
have made it about that.
well, but
Like
it's more
that's
so
why
about
we've
the
reached an
belief.
impasse.
Okay,
But
but
we've
can
reached
I
an
just
impasse because I am connected to the source of consciousness, so I understand morality, and you don't.
no, we've reached an impasse because I believe there is a spectrum of consciousness and a higher and there's higher forms of consciousness and there's lower forms. And you don't believe that to be
And
the case.
pedophilia is a lower form, or lust is a lower form.
Um,
You haven't really
both.
differentiated between. Okay, so
Probably at
if you're
different
saying,
levels. I don't know exactly if I would.
well, if you're saying lust is wrong,
I don't think lust is
then
wrong. I think it's a lower feeling to indulge in than love.
I guess I'm just saying you haven't really said anything specific about pedophilia. All
Okay,
you've
I'll say
said
it right
is
now.
that
So
okay.
my problem with pedophilia in even the abstract is, and you know, you'll have to bear with me here if I'm using terms that you're not as comfortable using in this regard, but I'll do my best to explain. So what I believe the pedophilia is there's a few different ways it manifests, but one is it's a kind of repeat of trauma. Let's say if someone is molested as a child, they will
Mhm.
want to enact that onto others. I think that's an easier thing to understand for most people. But let's just say someone wasn't molested as a child and they're just a pedophile, or they have those urges outside of that.
I don't think the research is too conclusive on that. I think
Okay, great. Then I have an explanation for it.
there's a good number of people who were not molested as children but who are still pedophiles.
Right, right. And I think that's tied together with what I was talking about with connecting with one's inner child, if I could use that term. I think we all
Okay.
have this. Um, okay. So back to experience. Experience is the most primary thing. Children are always experiencing life in a fresher, more pure, innocent, less conditioned, less tainted lens than adults because they're not conditioned by language. They're not defining their world around them. Everything is more of a mystery, right? So they have a
Yeah.
greater imagination. I would call them more connected to the source of consciousness if we're using that kind of language. But
Okay.
that be as it may, um, pedophiles, I think, there's a desire to connect with that source, that wonder, that purity, that innocence, that childlike, that inner child. But instead of connecting with it as an artist would do internally by facing through the self, an artist expresses their inner child is how I would say it. But a pedophile is more like they externalize that, and they externalize it onto a desire for someone else, for something outside of themselves. They're not facing themselves. They're afraid to face themselves. And instead, they're externalizing that childhood onto an innocent child outside of themselves. And so the way to connect with it for them it's a perverse way, because instead of expressing their internal self, they're connecting with their internal self by often victimizing an external other person. And even if they're not victimizing, the desire to, it's a desire that's detached from That's another layer detached from the source of direct experience, because it's not an experience you have yourself. It's an experience that you're forcing, that you're having, that you're imagining someone else to embody rather than embodying it yourself. And this is why language has its limitations, because me describing this sounds maybe kind of confusing or complicated to someone, but it's the idea of the internal and the external, if that makes sense at all to you.
You're saying that because you are fantasizing about somebody else in a lustful way, rather than confronting your own inability to get in touch with your inner child,
Mm.
it is bad
Perverse.
or misguided? You're saying you're
Yeah,
perverted.
both. Yeah, misguided, bad.
Okay.
I'm not, again, I'm not an advocate for saying these people should be written off and killed or anything. I think we agree on a lot in terms of empathy, in terms of understanding, awareness. It's just that
You're saying pedophiles are confused.
something like that. They're yes, they're I don't know if confused is the word. They're externalizing what would be better. They'd be better off internalizing. They'd be better off embodying. They want to connect with something, but they're going about it the wrong way. That's kind of how I would put it. Um, yeah. And I think artists are the prime example of someone connecting with it in a beautiful, loving way, where they're expressing their inner child through an imaginative creation of art, music, film, what have you. You know, these are expressions that come from within. Whereas a sexual relation with someone else is an external source of pleasure, of yeah, it's an external source of pleasure onto someone else, onto another innocent child, and that's wrong.
So this is almost an argument against all lust and all fantasy.
Maybe it is. But I don't think lust is tied to fantasy. I think it's maybe it's a form of fantasy, but it's
Okay,
not all
so you're
fantasy.
saying, do you think all sexual fantasy is misguided?
That's something I haven't thought enough about, but I think if I were to say there is a sinfulness to lust, I think, and yeah, I think so. And when I say sinful, I know that it's not because the Bible or the book determines what is sinful, but because of what I'm saying. One of them, some ways of being lead you towards something greater, a greater expression, and other forms are an externalized derivative expression. Um, whereas lust is like, are you furthering your understanding of yourself? Are you furthering self-awareness? Are you furthering your conscious experience by only lusting and only giving into that surface level desire? No, that's my stance on it.
Okay.
But I'm still learning. I
So
don't have all the answers either. This is just,
sure, I'm not asking you if it's objectively wrong. I'm just asking what you think.
yeah, okay.
So okay, so part of it to you is that is just fantasy at all, sexual fantasy. Also, a pedophile is defined by their sexual fantasy, so we're thinking of them as somebody who spends a lot of time fantasizing. And then on top of that, they're fantasizing about something that would be um, like rape if they were to do it.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of, and well, I was gonna say like this is maybe is another discussion, but I'll just mention like I also don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of people in positions of power, of extreme wealth, and all this are also coming out to be pedophiles because, well, I think that's the same. It's almost like it lines that kind of gives me support to what I'm saying, where it's like these people who are so rich and powerful and successful, and yet what are they really trying to reconnect with? Is their inner child? Is this some sort of
Wait, who are
innocence?
we? What rich pedophiles are
Oh
we
man,
talking
I
about?
mean, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein, everyone,
They're not
people.
pedophiles.
No, they're not because they just because why? How are they
The
not?
girls are too old for them to be pedophiles.
Well, I guess that depends where you draw the line in terms of age. I don't even know the exact ages.
Puberty.
Okay.
I mean, if you ever catch me fucking a 15-year-old and then I say I was just trying to get in touch with my inner child, that's a lie. I don't think that's what makes people attracted to 15-year-olds.
Okay. Catholicism,
Certainly not
Catholic,
16-year-olds.
Catholic priests, to use a religious example, who fornicate with young boys. That I think is a similarly perverse thing that I'm not even that surprised by. They're they're in this position of power where they're this sort of esteemed rank in this church, in this organization, and what do they have access to? Are these young boys, these innocent kids?
Yeah.
And why are they attracted to them? Maybe because it's something to do with I mean, it's just something where interviewing people is useful, and maybe that's why you're doing something kind of interesting by interviewing these pedophiles, is because I think if you interview enough of them, you will see there to be a certain pattern of desire and where that comes from if you look deeply enough.
I don't know that I'm going to talk about that too much.
That's what
him.
I would talk about. What are you going to talk
I
about?
know. I want people to see that pedophiles put their pants on one leg at a time and floss and get parking tickets just like the rest of us. That's more what the interview is about.
It does seem like, as a consequence of technology, it is getting more normalized, because these online spaces, you can have people who are 30 years old in the same community as someone who's 12, and just access to information, pornography, all these things, your lusts and desires can be fulfilled and fantasized about in a way that they never could have before. But that doesn't make it right either. I'm not saying that's your argument, but in other words, this is a discussion that's going to become more and more relevant as time goes on, and I think that's what you're sort of tapping into.
I don't think the priest thing is that much of a mystery to me. It's like you're telling boys as they hit puberty, or when they're I guess in high school, as when do you decide to become a priest? Sometime around, I guess, graduating high school, I would assume. And you're saying, do you want to spend the rest of your life having sex with a woman, or do you want to spend the rest of your life not having sex with women but hanging out with little boys? And so I assume every single pedophile is going to say, I'll choose the second one.
So in other words, you think,
and also, if you're not interested in having sex with women, why would you want to spend your life being socially pressured and shamed? It's a perfect explanation to say, oh, well, I'm a priest, so. And then you can be thinking, I don't have to spend my life with your nasty ass.
Yeah. A lot of this goes back to ultimately, I believe there is no self. And I don't know what you think about that, but the self is just a creation of the ego.
I think you are, the way you think that I am avoiding communing with the source of consciousness, I think you are avoiding communing with the tender, dark meat of your inner sexuality.
Why are you assuming that?
It's just what I think.
Okay, you can think that, but I don't think I've given you any indication of that.
But you have.
I said that every human being is capable of the most evil deeds possible, and myself included. I'm capable of the greatest evils ever, and it's an understanding of that you're able to realize that, well, you have to understand, you have to have faced yourself in order to know where you're going. You have to know what you're capable of to know what you should be. I'm capable of the most perverse acts ever, and so are you, and so is anyone. And to deny that that would be delusion. But to accept that is how you overcome it.
I'm not talking about capability. I'm talking about interest.
Okay.
proclivity.
Okay.
That is something I think you have not sunk your teeth into as much as I have.
Maybe.
So if you were to send me on a spirit journey, it would be to chew my ayahuasca and go off into the desert, climb a mountain or some shit. Uh, and I would send you to Pornhub
Of course, I've been on
uh,
Pornhub.
on a magical journey. Yeah, my sense is that you're you're hiding in the clouds.
Okay.
And
I've
you see me out here telling people to wallow in their perversions.
There's something greater than people's desires at play here, and that's something I don't think you've experienced. There's a source of desire that you maybe haven't
And there's a
interacted with.
depth to desire that I think that you haven't experienced.
That's a big assumption. I've been in the depths of porn. I've quit porn. I don't watch porn anymore, and I used to, and I've had all kinds of fucked up desires. I mean, nothing pedophilic or um, nothing even,
Of course not.
you know. But yeah, but I'm not even saying
Nothing weird. I hope
I'm
we
not
don't
saying
do
I'm
anything
above that.
weird.
I'm not saying
I
I'm
haven't had
above
any
that.
weird thoughts either. Yeah.
No,
No,
I have
neither.
had weird. I have had weird
Okay.
sexual urges and fetishes and these kinds of things. I'm not. I'm perfectly okay to admit that, but I'm also willing to admit that, um, that I think what I want out of life and what I want out of these fantasies is a perversion of something more meaningful. And it's and in my case, and I think a lot of people's cases, and this is what I was talking about with the technology, um, a big problem is that these certain desires are fed into and are propagated and promoted and made to be okay, whether it's by society or the technology or the accessibility, the consumption of pornography, and other things are made more and more taboo, inaccessible, and so. Um, I also think that there's a big role to play in terms of society, in terms of culture, when it comes to uh, whether or not people end up being sexual degenerates or predators or what have you. It's like our society, the structure of our society is also important in shaping that. Not entirely. Maybe there will be outliers and genetic predispositions and all that, but that's also a big factor. And so I've been to the depths of pornography. I've been in that darkness, and I think you're right that people need to know the darkness to emerge from it. But I've been there
I
too.
want you. I want to submerge you in darkness.
What does that entail?
I don't know specifically. I think it just feels like you're saying that like you. I feel like you're trying to turn everybody into monks, and I'm trying to turn everybody into monkeys.
Yeah, I think you're right. Uh,
Yeah, I just think that we're disgusting monkeys, and we should enjoy ourselves to whatever extent is feasible or morally acceptable.
I think we're an expression of some conscious creation, whether you call it God or not, that's taking biological form. And the ultimate test of man, we're an experiment to see whether or not man, self aware, biological life, is good. And going to these urges, lowers us to animals and reduces us
Yes.
to lab experiments, to scientism. And there's
Yes.
way more to life than determined data
No.
sets and experiments. And that's what love
No,
is.
it cuts through your delusions. Eat the banana.
See, this what you're saying doesn't hold any weight because you haven't seen what
Eat
I've
the
seen.
banana, my monkey friend. Eat the
Eat the
banana.
shrooms. Eat the shrooms. That's a part of evolution too. That's what you're disregarding.
I
They're
don't
just
think
as
so.
oh yeah, well they grow out of decomposed life after death. You can't ever say that you're pursuing the truth if you're not willing to experiment a little bit. That's what I would say. And maybe um, your mind will be changed if you do. And maybe that's what you're afraid of.
Could be. I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think this has been an interesting discussion. I'd be interested to have another discussion at some point, but it does seem like we're at a little bit of a um,
We've
yeah.
reached it. It's reached its natural conclusion.
Yeah, I guess let people determine what they will from this conversation for now.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, likewise.
Stay in touch.
Yeah, see you around.
All right. See you around.
Peace. Um, what'd you guys think? What'd you guys think? I haven't looked at the chat this entire time. How do you guys feel about this discussion? I hope it wasn't too boring for anyone. And at times I was maybe not expressing myself as well as I could have. No, I'm not on shrooms. Um, but I think I got some important ideas across. And I think he understood a lot of what I was trying to say, which is good. I knew he was smart, but I'm glad he understands where I'm coming from. I think I understand where he's coming from. So that's good. I didn't expect to change his mind through one conversation. And I hope you guys, I don't know, I just hope it made people think a little bit. That's really all I could say. Question things, ask some questions. All lust is wrong. Yeah, that was an interesting point. I don't know if wrong is the word. It's not that lust is wrong. It's necessary, but perhaps it's wrong to indulge in lust. It's like, well, it's like eating, like it's normal to be hungry, want food, but maybe it's wrong to be gluttonous. And it's wrong, this is where sins come into play. But again, it's like, you bring up that word and you bring up any religious themes and people lose you. But it's not even something that you need to just blindly believe. It's something you can experience. I'm perfectly okay admitting that if I go overboard, last night I binge ate. I ate a lot of food. I was gluttonous. And well, that was wrong, not because the Bible said it's wrong, but because what I experienced in this morning was a kind of bloated feeling of regret, of sluggishness, and of not, it's not healthy ultimately.